Joining me today on Conversations About Fit Over Having It is Roger Hanney. He and I met in 2013. We ran 250 kilometres through Australia's Simpson Desert together over 6 days, but he's done way more epic runs. We get into some of those, the nitty-gritty parts, the ugly parts, the exciting parts, the really emotional parts. So Roger's going to share that with us. And we're also going to talk about what life with type 1's like. Some days we have crappy days, some days we have really good days. We'll talk about a lot of things that make type 1 smaller in our lives. Enjoy this episode. It was really fun making it. Amazing to have you here, Roger. Really excited. I'm excited to have you on for a conversation about being fitter for having it, which is what I feel my approach to living with diabetes is about. But we're really going to talk about your life, and some of the stuff that you've done really inspired me, and some of the things you've said to me over the course of living with type 1 have made a big difference to my life. And we've become friends now. We've caught up occasionally and talked about what it's like to run with type 1, but also some of the experience we have just living with type 1. So it's really, really good to have you here. Thanks for coming over. I'm looking forward to having a chat with you. I'll get onto your bio in a minute, but one of the first things I asked you to do was to have a think about a song or a bit of music that describes to you what life with type 1's like. What did you choose?
Yeah, thank you. It's great to come and sit with you, because you're also one of the people who, whenever we catch up, it makes me reinterrogate my way of being with type 1, which is it's a real credit to you and what you're doing, and it's a really good thing to keep going. But as far as the song, I picked All My Friends by LCD Sound System from their Madison Square Gardens farewell show, because it's uplifting and it's chaotic and it's about sort of new endings and new beginnings. And there's a line in it I love about setting controls for the heart of the sun. But then when we were just talking about it before the show, you actually picked up a line that absolutely is about diabetes that I've never connected with.
Yeah, there is a line in it, Roger. There's the bit where they say you check the charts and you figure it out from there. And that was really quite impactful to me. So here it is, LCD Sound System and All My Friends.
That's how it starts. We go back to your house. You check the charts and start to figure it out. And if it's crowded, all the better, because we know we're gonna be up late. But if you're worried about the weather, then you pick the wrong place to stay. That's how it starts.
So Roger, thanks for that. I'm going to run through your bio because it is very impressive. And there's some things that we share and there's some things that are quite different. But Roger and I are both in the 50s club now, Roger, is that right? Yeah. We don't look it, of course, but we're both in the 50s club. You're a dog lover. You really enjoy the company of dogs, and so do I, and there's something that we've got in common there. You're a husband to Hayley, and you're a father of 2 kids. You love writing. You've done some blogging about your runs. You've done some blogging about your life with type 1 as well. So I really enjoy reading some of those blogs as well. And professionally, you build brands. You're a strategic marketer. People might know you from the time with Hoka 11, as they were when I first met the brand. And you helped build that brand, something really impressive. And you're now with Tailwind. And it's nice that you've connected one of your passions to your professional life as well. And getting that balance right is something we might talk about as we go through the conversation today as well. Now, tell me about being a honey badger or a turtle.
Yeah, okay, so honey badger to me is just an iconic animal that just gets it done, whatever's happening. I think everyone of our age certainly remembers the honey badger don't give a clip. And I think for me, that's definitely the mindset in trail and ultra and big mountain adventure.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think if you're going to have a totem animal for life, especially nowadays, I think that's definitely a good one. And then I said, my wife has a very cool tattoo of a turtle from when we were diving overseas. And as much as I'd like to be more of a tiger shark,
Yeah.
I think that's probably a little bit, classic. Everybody wants to be a lion or a tiger
Yeah,
shark or an
yeah.
eagle. So turtles are really amazing because you see the way they live in a harsh, exposed environment,
Yeah.
and they get by working with what's around them. It's like you've got animals that are actually designed to cut you in half,
Yeah, yeah.
and you go to the same feeding grounds as them. So I think there's a commonality between honey badgers and turtles for sure.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. And one of the things we might get onto as well, Roger, because I'm interested in this, is you dive as well. You've been diving and you've been diving with sharks. And I think when I was first diagnosed with type 1, there were a lot of things we were told we couldn't do. And one of them was diving, scuba diving, because they were worried about people with type 1 going under the water, and the regulations and the guidance on that all changed. And so we can go and dive now. So we might explore that a bit as well, about how you can follow and explore those passions with an illness and condition like type 1 diabetes as well. But you're here, Roger, because I met you on a trail run. The shirt's there, Big Red Run, 2013. And the only reason I got to that run was because of you, because I didn't think I could do it. I thought it was one of these races that I just couldn't do. It's a 250 run through the desert over 6 days in the middle of Australia. And I just didn't think people with type 1 could do that sort of stuff. And I called the organiser, Greg, who you know very well. You spent a lot of time with Greg, and said, do you think I can do the race? Because he was raising funds for type 1. And he said, yeah, you should meet this guy, Roger, give him a call. And so I did. I gave you a call, and that peer-to-peer exchange that we had about how you could manage it, how you could drive yourself to that, was really helpful. And that got me onto your running profile, which at the time, you'd already done the 4 Desert Series with Racing the Planet, a massive series. You did that in a year, was it?
Yeah.
One year to do 4 of these desert marathons. And the next year we did Big Red Run, which was your 5th. And from there, you've just gone on. And I've got to look at the list, because it's like one of these bucket lists for anyone that wants to do ultra marathon running. You've done Hard Rock twice?
Yeah, 1.5.
1.5 times.
1.5. Those are two different
Because
stories.
these races are designed to break you. And some of your blogs, Roger, really do talk about those breaking points and how you can get through them sometimes, but how sometimes you can't. You've done UTMB, like Mont Blanc. You've run around the base of Mont Blanc with type 1 diabetes as well, which is quite amazing. You were the first person with type 1 diabetes to do the Racing the Planet 4 deserts. And you've done Coast to Cozzy, I don't know, about 1,000 times. How many times have you done that?
I've done 5 Coast to Cozzy.
5 Coast to Cozzies. So these are impressive 100-miler events, running for 100 miles. And I've done a bit of running on my own. I've got up to 100 kilometres, but I've got a big run coming up, and we might talk a bit about that later on as well. One of the great things you say, Roger, is you only find out how fun silly things are by throwing yourself at them. And I think that's a really interesting way to live your life. And with diabetes as well, I think we'll explore that today as well. We've got some differences as well. I was diagnosed when I was 14, so I was a teenager, and you were diagnosed quite late in life, really, or later than people would normally expect people with type 1 to get it. So do you want to talk to us about how that changed your life? You'd grown into being an adult without type 1, and then it suddenly comes on. Do you remember how that moment felt and how it might have changed your outlook on life?
Yeah, it happened for me at a period. I was already in a bit of transition as an adult, because I'd say I made up for having a pretty serious youth by having very silly 20s.
Yeah.
And I was trying to re-navigate life in my early 30s. And I just started doing a bunch of healthy things and active things, ironically.
Yep.
So I was 6 months into a running thing, and I was training to do my first half marathon.
Yeah. Okay.
And all of a sudden, a month out from this race, right in the heart of Easter 2008, when I was 33,
Yep.
the wheels really fell off. So I did what I thought was a big run, which was 15K in training, and I felt pretty cooked after that, and I thought that explained a lot of things. But it didn't explain why I had to pee every hour, and I was, emulating a racehorse the way I was doing that. And I was drinking like a litre plus an hour, and my eyesight was going pretty
Classic
hard.
signs.
All the stuff. Yeah. And so there I am, as you say, like I'm 33. I figure I've got life worked out. I'm an adult. I'm doing sensible stuff. And this thing happens out of nowhere. And I woke up in the middle of the night on, like midweek after this run. And I went to Dr. Google because I just thought, hang on.
Yeah.
And it said, this is probably type 1. And I went to the doctor and I say to the doctor, hey, is there anything around that looks like type 1? And they're going, oh, no, you're not going to have that, because they didn't think I would have it either. And then I get a call 3 hours later because my blood sugar is about 23, and straight into the diabetes clinic, but via the doctor, which was funny because I go back to the doctor and gets onto the phone to the diabetes clinic and goes, oh yeah, I've got this 33-year-old male here with a blood sugar of 23. And I heard the little voice on the end of the phone go, oh, bit of a big boy, is he? And I was just like, at that point I was 78 kilos.
Yeah,
so the
yeah,
answer was no. But as you say, yeah, it's a real outlier case.
And I think it highlights one of the things that often gets very confusing about conversations about diabetes, is that people have got their preconceptions, and it gets stigmatized a lot around how you get diabetes and what you don't know. And there's so much misinformation out there. And I think I've learned a lot over the 40 years that I've lived with it about how educating yourself around diabetes makes a real difference. I understand people with type 2 diabetes a lot better than I do now, and realise that they're not bringing it on themselves most of the time. I realise that people with type 1 are doing really extraordinary things with their lives now. And I think a lot of people don't really appreciate that. And, look at you, you're looking fit, you're looking healthy. We both are. I've lived with it for 40, you've lived with it for nearly 20 years now. But that change, Roger, can you remember what that was like when you didn't have diabetes and then the next day you've suddenly got it? Did it change the way you thought about your goals or your aspirations or what you wanted to do with your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt completely turned upside down. I felt like I was the center of some cosmic prank, and I thought, no, there's got to be another, this can't be right. But all that goes out the window pretty quickly, as you know, because you've got to get your hands around it. I didn't want to talk to my family about it even until I felt like I had some control over it, which is unrealistic because you're only ever just getting a better level of control. You've never really got full control, I think. But my brother was a massive help. We've always been close. Like, it's always that thing of you could pick up a call, have a chat, be really close on something, help each other out in any way you can. But because he was also a surgeon, I called him pretty quickly. I think I texted and just said, hey, this has all just happened. And it was going out within about 24 hours of that diagnosis, going out with my brother for dinner, and he really normalized it because I think I had a sense of shame. I had a sense there was something wrong with me. All of that was feeling quite acute. As you know, you might remember, you have this real sense of dislocation. And I got up. I remember clearly getting up to go from the table to the bathroom to take my insulin for dinner. And he goes, where are you going? And I explained. And he said, don't worry what other people think. And that's such simple but
it's great
crucial advice.
It's so important. And I think I was a bit of a closet diabetic for a long time. You know, I used to inject under the table, or I used to sneak off to a toilet, which is not the most hygienic thing to do to look after it. I didn't want people to see me finger prick glucose testing, and technology's come on so far now. Like, no one would know from the outside. We wear stuff on our arms, or we've got patches on our tummies, but most of the time they're covered and no one would see it. But back then, it was something that you wanted to hide. It's quite interesting though, because you went through that as an adult, and most people go through it as a child, and it's their parents that take a lot of the shouldering of it, and they're the people that I went to. My parents were the ones that I spoke to about it. I'm feeling like this, what do I do? So really interesting that it was still your family, and your brother was there with a medical background as well to help you through that. What about other people in the diabetes community? Did it take you long to integrate with them? Were they a big part of your life? And if not initially, were there things that you learned from them later in life, with the diabetes? Did you pick up any tips from people about what ways to live and what to do?
Yeah. The diabetes community was a huge help right away. And I'd say I've always been grateful that I got it as an adult rather than as a kid, because I think being a kid is hard enough. And I know that you don't necessarily, if you get it as a kid, you've got nothing to compare to. But I think for me, reflecting on what that would be like, it just feels like that's a diabolical mix of everything if you did have it as a kid. And I'd also say an important thing for me and for us now, is if it hadn't been for the internet, then I couldn't have connected with the community the way that I did. Like, I was able to immediately go and research. I found Sherry Kohlberg's book about the Diabetic Athlete Handbook. I connected immediately with Missy Elvin Foy, who was the first type 1 to go to US Olympic marathon trials. So I was able to connect with her immediately and ask about how to run. I was able to connect with Alan Bolton, who created EXT1D.
T1D,
he's like a local triathlete and does a bunch of rowing and other things. And then Hypoactive as well. So Monique Hanley, who's an Aussie cyclist, and she was a cycling commentator as well. She'd created Hypoactive as a local support group, and it was mainly cyclists, but a lot of the same things that type 1 cyclists need to navigate. And there were a few runners through there too. So even in a really short period, I think if you look at what it would be like to get it when I got it in 2008 versus yourself in probably like the 80s.
1986, yeah. No, it was quite different. And I think the diabetes community then, because I was a teenager, was to throw me in with other kids that had got it. And I didn't want to be part of that club. I had some of the stigma myself. I didn't want to be part of the diabetes community. So I retreated from it for quite a long time. And it was only the passage of time and then starting to bump into some of these groups and organisations and individuals that are living with type 1 and doing extraordinary things later on in life that really connected me to the power of peers. Like, there's a peer power there. When you can talk to people about how they do it, you don't necessarily mimic them and imitate them, but you learn from the way that they're approaching it and adapt or tweak the way that you run it yourselves. There was one story I got, Gary Mabbott. He was a professional footballer, and I feel really lucky to have got this advice. He was playing football for England and Tottenham Hotspurs, which was the team I supported. And he was on a kids' TV show and he was injecting an orange with insulin. And that for me was what gave me this hope and this idea that I could throw my life into being fit and exercise, and I could still chase incredible dreams. I could still be a professional footballer if I wanted to. Didn't get anywhere near it, but that was the inspiration I got. But yeah, the social media was much less then. There wasn't any. There weren't even digital phones, so mobile phones. So it was very difficult for me to connect with that community. Were there more day-to-day challenges that you picked up as well from that community?
I think what was interesting from the community was just seeing that everyone had some different struggle. As in you have people with overlapping autoimmune conditions that's just a whole other thing. And then you have people who seem to really struggle with it. And for me, that was interesting because my struggle was taking it along with me on silly challenges. Whereas some people, I think, center it as the key challenge that they're navigating. And I think the idea that people maybe blame their type 1 or that idea of has type 1 ever disadvantaged you or made something harder? And it certainly can make some things harder, but how you post-mortem that, I think, makes the difference. Because if you're post-mortem on, classic example for me has been you're presenting to C-suite or senior executives, and just as you're going into the room, your sugars go all the wrong way, and you feel like you're visibly sweating, and you sound like you're drunk, and you just go, the wheels have really come off this thing. When you reflect on that, because that can happen. I mean, in 20 years of living with the thing, that's going to go wrong sometimes. When that happens, you can either go, oh, type 1, goddamn diabetes, brr. But if you rewind it, it's actually you. How did you manage it? What didn't you get right? What could you have done better? What could you have done differently? What could you have anticipated? Because if you're always putting the blame on diabetes as though it's this additional individual in your life that you've got no control over, then you're externalizing that responsibility. Whereas if you can actually own the things that don't work, then you can do them differently next time.
I really connect with that owning it piece. You've got to own it. You've got to accept it. And I was at a conference back in February, and they talked about you have to go through this period of grief. When you get diagnosed with a chronic condition, and let's say it's type 1 diabetes like us, you've got to accept and acknowledge that you're grieving for a future that you'll never have, because you never thought you were going to have injections for the rest of your life. You never thought you were going to have to monitor your blood glucose. And once you've accepted that and you can take it on and own it, you can actually boss it. And I heard a really good thing about explaining about this approach to living with type 1. You can either wrap your life around type 1 so that you put diabetes at the center and you manage it within an inch of its life, and you really focus on getting your blood glucose right. You really focus on all the things you can't do to make the diabetes okay. Or you can do it the other way around. You wrap diabetes and fit diabetes into the life that you want to live. And I think the stuff that you've done, Roger, since you got type 1, and we'll get onto those running exploits soon, because they really are impressive things that you've done. And I'll be interested to see whether type 1 has driven you to those, or whether they were going to be driven towards anyway had you not got diagnosed. But that whole concept of throwing yourself into challenges because you're you, and the diabetes is just something that's got to come along and it's got to fit in and you've got to make it happen, is really quite powerful. Were you starting to think about how you could bring diabetes or exercise or sport into your life at that stage when you were diagnosed?
Yeah, I just started. Like, I literally, I mean, this is kind of gross to talk about because it's so far from me or my life now, but I'd literally quit smoking.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'd quit smoking 6 months before, and that's when I started the whole, like the same week that I quit smoking, I did a 10K race in the town that I was in Queensland.
So you've made this commitment to kind of the half marathon as well, and start training for those sorts of things. So it's all around the same time, right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Like my sister-in-law, she at the time was chasing her dad's marathon PB.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if she can do a marathon, then I can do a half marathon.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the sort of course that I was on. And then when the diagnosis comes through and you say, well, can I still do the half marathon? And the doctor's kind of tongue-in-cheek and goes, oh, come back next year, do the whole thing. And a little voice in my head dropped an expletive in that doctor's direction. And I think that for me was as much as anything. I think about oysters make pearls because they're irritated, and everyone's got whatever phrase they turn to in that, as in, you get diamonds from pressure and so on.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a little bit like a gauntlet being thrown down.
Yeah.
My interest in running, like, it's been funny thinking about it, preparing to have a chat with you. My first clear memory of being stunned by running was watching Zulu as a little
Right.
kid, which is about it's about 100 British soldiers getting surrounded by 2,000 or 3,000 Zulus at Rorke's Drift.
Don't throw bloody spears at me. It's Michael Caine.
Yeah, Michael Caine's first film too.
Yeah.
And the whole thing that was impressive about the Zulu is they could run 30 miles and then 30 or 40 miles in extreme conditions and heat, and then fight at the end of it. And the thinking was, well, if you could do that. And then I remember, I think it was the LA Marathon in 84, and it's like the air was so, like, it was such a hot race and there was so much smog. It's like the athletes almost looked orange. And just watching that on TV and seeing these guys just absolutely bury themselves. And then I think in Australia, we've got one of the best icons of marathon running and suffering in the world, which is De Castella. You know, like Robert De Castella. For all the other great marathoners that Australia's produced, he's a guy who thrived on hurting everyone else as much as he could, you know, to see what they could take. And this bridge for me, it's interesting to me, I used that and my sister, who was a 1,500 state level athlete.
Yeah, okay.
Those were the things that inspired me to find running as an outlet in my teens. And then I forgot all about running. And I'd just come back to running, you know, more than a decade later to find this sort of comfort and direction and focus as an adult. And diabetes comes along, and actually, rather than deterring me from running, it amplified it. Like, it magnified how important running was to me and how much I was getting from running. And then everything came together because my running helped me manage my type 1. It went into really extreme running. And then that became my connection with Hoka, which obviously became my work for the next decade and a half. So I had this really rare, beautiful synergy between what I was doing to be happy and healthy, what I loved doing and made me feel good, what connected me with the community and the people that mattered to me the most, plus also the thing that helped me build a life with my family. So yeah, I appreciate that.
So you talked about a couple of things there, Roger, that I really picked up on. Well, one was this journey that you had with Hoka, and you did some amazing things to build that brand with them that are really quite impressive. But you also talked about these extreme events. Now, we'll get onto those, but these really are extreme events. And I'm wondering, what made you pick that first run? What made you decide that you actually wanted to push your body, not from just a half marathon, but into these 100-milers eventually? Was it, and the 4 Desert Series, for example? What led to that?
I had a friend, Brent Harris, was a Kiwi decent runner, like lots of Kiwis, who was managing a store in the inner west, managing a running store. And I was just becoming friends with him because he could obviously see that I had this kind of outlier, slightly fascinated with strange stuff mentality. And he helped me with the basics of running, you know, as in bit about nutrition, bit about shoes, bit about hydration and so on. And he introduced me to trail running as well, which it's absurd that you sort of think, oh wow, running but on a trail, as in it's not this crazy thing in a far off land. Like, you can step 5 feet off the pavement and do it most places you live, right? But he'd also done 100K, and he was talking about he'd done the North Face 100, and I was like, the North Face, where is that? I didn't realize that was a brand even at the time. And I asked all the dumb questions about, oh, do you eat? Do you sleep? What do you know, all of that. So that got me fascinated in the idea of doing 100K. And then I think by the time I was doing the marathon, I was already thinking about doing 100K. And I just started to do trail running. And then when I did finally do the 100K, so my first 100K was the North Face in, I think, 2010.
So that's only a couple of years after you were diagnosed. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I tried to step it up each year.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I did like a half marathon, then I did
Yeah.
a marathon, then I did 100K.
Oh, I know that plan. I've done the same thing myself. It's like once you've done one, you learn so much from them. That was my experience. I've learned so much. I wanted to just keep pushing it, but yeah, keep going. The
You've got that
boundaries.
nice little pocket of running where you go, I'm going to focus on doing everything faster, and then you realize it's easier to do everything longer.
Longer, exactly.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. Yeah.
So in that first 12 months after I'd done my first 100K, I did like another 500K. So I did 6 100Ks in my first year of running ultra. And then obviously from that you need to do a miler. And I was lucky enough to get flown overseas by Medtronic as part of the Global Heroes thing. So I ran in Twin Cities. And that was 6 weeks before I did my first 100 miler.
Yeah, okay.
So that was October, being over there, coming back, doing the Great North Walk, the original Great North Walk.
And Roger, just for some people that haven't done these runs before, these 100 milers, they're taking 30 plus hours, right? These are long runs where you're on your feet with type 1.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I never got it together to be quick enough to have it done in under a day. I did 100 miles in under 24 hours one time as part of Coast to Cosy.
Yeah.
Like I hit the 100 mile mark in about 21 and a half hours.
Well, we'll be talking about this, Roger, because I've got the event I've entered next is a race with no finish line.
Yeah.
And so you just keep running until you can't run anymore. And I'm interested in talking to you about that challenge, which we'll get to. But you're explaining really well this journey that you had into long distance running, endurance running, right? Which really, you really got to put your body through some stuff. Do you think diabetes was driving you to that? Or do you think it was just a drive to just push your own personal boundaries and the diabetes kind of came along with you?
Definitely early on, type 1 feels like this constant message of no, you can't.
Yep.
And you answer it by what you do.
Yep.
And that to me was the physical condition, like the physical conditioning and the extreme running stuff. And I had this mindset that I wanted to have a body that could roll out of bed and do 100K at the drop of a hat, as in just have anybody go, hey, you need to run 100Ks today, and just be able to go, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You know? So that was definitely wrapped up together. I didn't feel like I couldn't do it, but I felt like I had to find out how I could do it.
Yep.
And then progressing from doing that first 100 miler in 2011 and meeting Greg and the Born to Run crew, and going overseas and doing, you know, the Grand Slam for the Racing the Planet races.
Stage runs,
that was a huge unlock. And it's, I think part of why we're so lucky when we see, for instance, I forget his name, but the fellow who's performing really highly in tennis at the moment with type 1.
Yeah, Zverev, Alexander Zverev.
Yeah, like absolutely phenomenal. Completely chaotic sport, doesn't match type 1 at all. It's power and endurance.
It's incredible. And also right topical right now, Lachlan Kennedy. He's just run one of the fastest times in Australia, over 100 metres. He's got type 1 as well. And no one would think about that. Like, they're doing extraordinary things.
100%.
Yeah.
So as much as you're doing it for the first time for yourself, and you have all these pure question marks, you don't have the answers, you got to go find them. Being able to see that people can do that, I think helps reassure you that you can find a way to do it. So it's not can I do it, it's how do I do it.
But I want to talk to you about how you manage diabetes generally without the running, right? Because we had a conversation before, you're right at that stage that a lot of people get to where you're thinking of switching from needles to an Omnipod for you. So what are the moves that you've made since you've been diagnosed, you only have 18 years now, that you've really kind of think you could impart to other people? What have you done well and what have you struggled with? And what's leading to this decision now around why you might shift to an Omnipod rather than the needles?
Yeah. So the thing that I'm dealing with now is I frankly don't like being 97 kilos. You know, it's like all my best running's been sort of 81 to 84 kilos.
Yeah.
And for all the excuses of, oh, I've got kids, busy life, etc., I just need to reimpose some routine and scheduling on myself. And I think being less awash in insulin, which I think with the closed loop technology now, with the
Yep.
pump and CGM working together, I think being less awash in insulin is going to be an important part of
Yep.
that and helpful.
Yep.
I went really well with the pump early on, so I was pumping from essentially within the first sort of 12 months of being diagnosed for maybe 8 years. And when I got back into scuba diving, which was about 2018, I switched from pump to manual because it just was a better fit. So I think the things that I've done are not fixate on HbA1c
Yep.
and sugars, except when you get negative outlier events. Like I had an HbA1c that was pretty much hovering around 9
Yeah, right.
when because I was working 60 hours a week. I was training, but I probably was eating more emotionally than functionally, and also in those sort of really early years of the kids when you feel like you're always anchored to the home to make sure everything's okay there. So I had to, reapply myself to the fundamentals.
Yep.
And I think it's probably a common thing where people have been living with it for a while. They feel like they've got it under control. They know it. It's quite automatic, and things just drift.
Yep.
And again, that's the nice thing with catching up with you recently. It's made me reassess some things and refocus on some things that I want to do better in the management. And I think pumping will be, for me, that'll be part of it.
Yeah. I think that does explain the kind of life course that I've had with it, and other people that I've spoken. I spoke to Lara a couple of months ago about it, and she was saying the same. You think one moment you've got it nailed. I've nailed this. And then something in your life changes and it gets in the way and it becomes your priority, and diabetes drops down the list. So I feel like that continual checking in, and that's what I use my discussions with my endocrinologist for. I always find my control improves directly after those because I'm focused on it, you're thinking about it again. And rather than just relying on the endocrinologist, going out and meeting other people with type 1 has been a big part of my life now, and I think I do get energised from this. I'm going to get energised from having this conversation with you. Like we caught up a couple of weeks ago and I was energised from that, and the discussion with Lara, understanding what people do and how they manage it opens up opportunities for you to just gradually improve or get a trajectory that changes from the one that you've been on. Like what does your future look like? What's future Roger thinking about and moving towards?
I think as long as I'm able to push a shark away and climb a mountain, I'm where I need to be physically. So I need to work on that, all those fundamentals that you want for, like, can you go out and just go up and down things for 24 hours? That's what I'm getting back to at the moment. And I really want to do a 100-miler again within about the next 18 months.
Yeah, okay.
And I think what I'm thinking for the 100-miler may be like a self-supported thing.
Yeah, okay.
So instead of actually working to someone else's timetable and training for a date, just mapping a course, whether it's Katoomba to Mittagong or something like that, and just getting out and having an epic adventure where you can possibly fail.
Yeah. I like that, and I think to some extent I've always seen diabetes as my issue, which is why I quite like doing the runs. I quite like self-supporting myself and going out there and proving that I can do it in extreme environments as well. But you do need to take people along with you, and as you've said, you're learning a lot from people along the way. I like what you said earlier on about Di Costello and looking at people that haven't got type 1 and just understanding that people do extraordinary things. Before I did my first run, I read a lot about, wartime heroics and explorers that went across Antarctica. They didn't have type 1, but they're putting the body through extreme things. And I don't think we're any different. I think we can put our bodies through extreme things as well, if we're careful, if we've got a plan, if we know what we're doing with our insulin and blood glucose. Are there other things that you've got out of, or you think are worth sharing, or things that you've learned from other people with type 1?
I think one of the key things, one of the key things for me that changed in life, and I think it changes for everyone with type 1, is spontaneity.
Yep.
So spontaneity is the one thing that gets absolutely murdered in the life of anyone who's got a type 1 diagnosis, because, classic example, let's say you've just had lunch with some friends or you've sat down for lunch, which means you've got insulin on board, and then you get a phone call that someone's got an emergency situation that they need your help with. And all of a sudden you're not eating, you're running across town, you're trying to do something urgently to help someone who needs you to be more competent and cognizant than they are. That's kind of gone unless you're ready for what your physiology is now. And early on, and especially around the time that we were doing Big Red, Big Red, the idea I formed is packing a parachute, so it's as long as you have packed a parachute, and that might be something as simple as having a bunch of candy like we've both got here under the table, as in what your hazards and risks are, and what your portable solutions are. I mean, it's everything from you can do a sprint on the spot, you can punch a tree, you can do anything to pump up adrenaline that's going to block the action of insulin. You can pound candy, you can throw coffee on top of it to accelerate the uptake of carbs. There's all these sorts of things. You can stop whatever you're doing. For me in trail running and ultra, this works for anybody who's running, is walking it in, which sounds really basic, but if you're doing 160k run, or if you're running across the country or whatever it is that you're doing, you will do better by really slowing down and addressing what's going wrong and throwing in way more carb than you should have in an hour and physically walking it in rather than trying to pretend you can keep running while your stomach's got 200 grams of carb in it. You can really turn things around by just owning the fact that the race you're running is kind of different than the one everyone else is running.
I know exactly what you're talking about there, and that whole discussion around spontaneity just going is one of my biggest frustrations. I can't leave the house without a bag of something or carrying something that's going to be my emergency strategy. And the other bit that gets me down is the not knowing why is my blood glucose high at the moment, or the pump just stops working for some reason. Why has it stopped working? And those bits that just catch you unaware when you haven't prepared can be quite frustrating. But I think you can draw strength from that, and I think you become better at adapting, you become more resilient, you become a better planner. What are the other moments where diabetes really gets you down? The spontaneity bit, I understand. Are there other bits about it that you really dislike and would like to remove?
Yeah, the biggest bit for me now is definitely that factor of what's going to happen if this ever is something the kids have to deal with. And I mean, you and I know the stats are well in our favor of this not happening. It's 95, 96% probability kids will never have to navigate it. But say we go camping and one of the kids goes to the toilet 3 times before they go to sleep, it's a matter of, oh, is this it? Or is that just them trying to stay up past bedtime? You know, and it's not like this grey cloud that follows you around, but it's this awareness or question that you've got no control over.
I think I dealt with that one, Roger, by thinking, because I have the same fear for my kids. There's a greater chance that they might get it, but it's still very low. And I dealt with that by saying, if they were going to grow up with diabetes, what better family could they grow up with it in than someone that already understands how it works and how it happens? I don't know if that would be a good thing or a bad thing, but I feel like that's the way that I coped with it. But that fear, I've got that fear. I've also got the fear about the complications and the future and what happens to me, and how do I suck some of my retirement and my enjoyment of life forward rather than working really hard to what could be a an earlier exit, if you like. And Lara spoke a bit about that when we met last time as well. Living life as a highlights, taking on these challenges, doing those things. So I feel like maybe that's a bit of comfort for you, knowing that they've got a great role model if they do get it. And, you know, you said you don't treat it as a grey cloud, but maybe that's something that you can hang on as well. You'll set them on the right path. You'll show them that anything's possible, which I think is really amazing.
Well, I think you've bomb-proofed yourself.
Yeah, I think
Like,
so.
you
Yeah,
know, and that's the thing is, on the one level, we get treated by the motor registry as having this chronic, horrible condition.
Insurance companies,
I know,
bane of my life.
Every birthday, guess what?
Oh.
Reminding you, and you want to reply, I'm pretty sure I'm in the sort of fittest 10% of the population.
Fitter for having it, exactly.
But no, exactly, fitter for having it.
Yeah. And I think there was one thing, Roger, that you said at the end of Big Red Run, in front of the camera, with me and Stephen, who had just been diagnosed. He was 18. We'd all finished this 250 run through the desert. And you said, there's pretty much nothing that we can't do. The only thing we can't do is produce insulin. Anything's possible. And I think that message is a really strong one. And I think you really have got a great outlook to life about owning it and living with that philosophy. So I'm really pleased to have met you for that reason alone. So Roger, when you're going through those moments of being frustrated by the lack of spontaneity, or something's happened and the diabetes isn't under control, or you're in that window where it's just not working, how do you cope with those kind of down times and that frustration and anger that you might feel towards diabetes? What are your sort of tactics to get out of those?
Well, I would say I'm fortunate to I've got a really good mentor that I work with basically weekly for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So he's a real touchstone and really grounding, great connection for me. And he's helped me build, I think, a reasonable level of self-awareness and introspection. So a key question to always come back to is, what am I doing now? You know, so if you are in any sort of turmoil, that works for everybody. Asking yourself and honestly answering, what am I doing now?
Yeah.
And it may be, what am I doing now while I'm sitting in traffic? It's like, no, what am I really doing now? Well, I'm feeling pissed off about something. It's like, no, what am I really doing now? It's, I am feeling unfairly treated by the world because, etc.
Yep.
And that really easily leads you to, well, that's not happening.
Yep.
And I'm sitting in traffic. And then the other thing that has been great is just feeding your head, I think, is good for everybody. I think we've all got away from reading or listening to things that make us smarter because we've got these beautiful little black rectangles that we can make ourselves progressively dumber with in a really appealing and entertaining way all day. I've been listening to Do Hard Things, which is a book by a guy called Steve Magnus, and he's a high performance coach, works with a lot of athletes, puts up a lot of good peer reviewed research. And one thing he's been talking about lately that I find really interesting and great to know is that the brain, we feel like the brain is an observational or experiential tool, but it's also a predictive tool.
Right.
So when you are seeing things in a negative way, you're actually making your experience negative.
Yeah.
Whereas if you understand that you own that aspect of your lens, you can review everything in front of you. So it's not a matter of, oh, I have type 1, it's this terrible thing and it means I can't do all of this stuff. It's, well, I have type 1 at a time when all this technology works really well and I've got great people to talk to about it and learn from, and I can actually go and do a bunch of stuff. And I've got, you know, so whatever situation you're in, the way that you view it and the way you colour it and the aspects of it.
I think that's brilliant, Roger. And I've just written this piece on LinkedIn, and it's about the two spirals. There's that negative spiral of looking at it as a problem, and you just spiral down and down and down, and it can be quite difficult to break out of it. You can break out of it, and some of the things that you've talked about are great ways of trying to help you get out of that. Be in the moment, read, grow your brain, do a whole range of things that you love. But you can also get on this positive spiral, and I feel like you've been on the positive spiral. You've done some amazing things, that life-changing experiences. I've done some too. because of the type 1 diabetes. And I think that's a really important message to everyone out there that's living with it. You'll go through this roller coaster journey of diabetes being high in your life and diabetes being low in your life. But if you keep coming back to what you love and the passions that you love and the people that you love, then you're never really going to go wrong. You'll go up and down, but you'll never go wrong. That's been great, Roger. We'll dive into the running and some of your experiences on some of those incredible journeys in part 2, and we'll get to that very shortly. Thanks, Roger. Great.
Thanks, Nathan.